Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Good. So just let me know, Crystal, when you're ready. And I have 20 minutes to speak. Is that correct?
20 minutes speak and 5 minutes QA.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Keith. I think we are ready now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you it's a pleasure to be here with you today or tonight, my time, today, your time, and to be able to talk a little bit about the context of open source in which open source software first and now open source hardware is having a significant impact on how we create value in the new economy. There's a clear imperative around the world in every one of the G10 countries and beyond to be able to create through collaborative development. This whole approach is one that is radically different from the siloed invention activity that we've seen previously. And increasingly in every industry, whether it's autos or security or networking or telecommunications or mobility or banking and financial services, we're seeing a sea change in how technology is developed, adopted, and employed. And this is a quite exciting time, but not one without risk. We've seen in the last 20 plus years the evolution of open source software and the movement toward from threat uh, and risk, RISK, patent risk, to a world where there is now a recognition among almost all companies on the software side of the need for interdependence.
Hi, Keith. Sorry
Yes,
to interrupt. Do you mind open up your camera so we can see your face?
sure. Yeah. Sorry.
Thanks a lot. Sorry for the interruption.
No, not at all. So essentially, what we're seeing is this transformation that we're in the middle of. And what it's bringing, though, is the potential for patent risk. And that patent risk comes not only from operating companies, but it also comes from patent assertion entities in many jurisdictions. And so, what I've historically done to give you some context for where I come to open source hardware from, it's from the world of open source software, where OIN in 2005 was launched by IBM, Red Hat, Novell, Sony, NEC, Philips, and Google as a way, and Toyota, as a way of dealing with the risk that's represented by companies like Microsoft and others that were very antagonistic to open source. And so OIN was founded and then joined by Toyota and Google in process. But essentially, these 8 entities have funded an entity that's designed to support one basic concept, that where we collaborate, where we build on each other's ideas and functionality, shouldn't sue each other. And we should share our technology so that we can advance the adoption of technology and the development of technology on top of core functionality. This has been very effective in the open source software world. We can go to the next slide, please, Crystal. Right now, there are over 3,650 participants in the open source license that OIN maintains that have bought into that basic principle of forbearance of litigation in areas of core technology and have agreed to cross-license all of their patents that read on open source functionality. And so what we do is create something called the Linux system, which is essentially a definition of what is in the protected zone. And then from there, we update that every 18 months to 2 years. And so that update process ultimately gives us the ability to evolve with open source to ensure that there are adequate protections built in for the community that is growing very rapidly on the software side. And there are over 3.25 million patents in the pool of owned patents that are part of the cross license. It is the largest cross license and patent protection initiative in the history of technology. There are companies all over the world: Baidu, Ali, Tencent, Huawei, Xiaomi, most of the auto companies in China, Alipay, Ant Financial, WeChat Pay, the clearing bank, Union Pay, companies like that type of company in all parts of the world. Hitachi, Fujitsu, all the Japanese companies, most of the Korean companies, European. I'll talk about how this is spread around, but the whole idea was to be globally inclusive. And there are 3,500 plus packages that are now part of this protection zone. And so they are insulated. When you adopt those packages, you're insulated from litigation because from all the companies that are part of our community. Next slide, please, Crystal. This whole idea of inclusivity is very important to us. 157 out of 195 countries across all industries are part of this community. It's free. There's no charge for anything that we do. And we have, again, some of the largest, most significant companies in the world, but importantly, literally 2,000 of the small to medium-sized companies that could otherwise not protect themselves from patent risk that we provide free coverage to. Next slide, please. And importantly, when we look at the balance, I'm most proud of the fact that in Asia Pacific, we've gone in the last 7 years from that region of the world representing only 16% of our membership to now nearly being 23% plus. And so we have great balance around the world. We've grown in the last 7 years in China at the highest rate of growth that we've ever experienced in a single country. And that's largely because Chinese companies are participating in record numbers in open source projects and adopting open source code. Next slide, please, Crystal. And essentially what we do in software is exactly what we want to do in hardware, which is to look at open source software project management organizations that mostly do software now. Some of them also do hardware. But what we're doing is looking at what core functionality is coming out of these projects. These are the project management organizations. Underneath, you have the individual projects. And what we're trying to do is look at what's core, whether it be software right now, but eventually hardware, and include it in this patent no-fly zone. And so we're tracking the major projects of the world, no matter where they are, whether it's OpenAtom that's managing them. We hope that there'll be lots of opportunities with OpenAtom in the future. We know they're just getting started, but right now we work a lot with Linux Foundation, OpenStack, Eclipse, and Apache, and other projects and project management organizations to ensure we're distilling really the important code so that we can insulate people who adopt it from litigation. Next slide, please, Crystal. And there's really an important point for me in the way I look at this is there's a parallelism between what happens in the technical collaboration environment of open source and throughout different projects in different technology areas and sectors, and what happens on the legal side. We're looking and what we've done over these 20 years or almost 20 years of existence is we've created a set of norms or code of conduct that one can adhere to if they are authentic within the open source community. So it's become the litmus test for authenticity is participating in the OIN license to say that you believe in the same concept, the same values as every other company, and that you will not sue on open source functionality. Next slide, please. This gives you an idea of what goes into our patent no-fly zone on the software side. So it's a bunch of common base packages that come from major projects like the Linux kernel itself, but also many other projects, and then software engineering kind of tools like Python, Ruby, languages, PHP, and then enterprise computing, mobility, networking, security, cloud computing, web, and then a variety of other elements and packages like Kubernetes, Kafka, Docker, technologies like that, as well as automotive grade Linux functionality that's used by a variety of companies in the auto sector. Next slide, please. This just gives you, these next few slides just give you a sense of the kinds of companies that are in our software license and the kinds of companies we hope to bring over because they've signed our software license, have been in our community for some as many as 15 or 20, 18 years. We want to bring these companies over to the hardware license once we launch that, so we can get off the ground very, very quickly in terms of building a patent no-fly zone around hardware. Next slide, please. Again, just an example of the kinds of companies that are in our community. These are just samples. There are many more in each of these categories and sectors. Next slide, please. Again, hardware companies, energy companies, industrial companies, semiconductor companies, all manner of companies are part of our community on the software side. And again, companies that we want to bring into the hardware side as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. Again, you know, Chinese companies, European companies, Japanese companies, Indian companies, again, some of the largest companies in the world, Disney, Haier, obviously you're all familiar with, HTC, Oppo, you know, many companies that you have familiarity with just from products that you see in the Chinese market. Tencent, obviously, on this list is one of the growing media giants. Essentially companies join because we're offering this notion of patent risk mitigation. And this is a very important slide because the same reasons will appear on the hardware side. We're trying to mitigate risk associated with patents that might read on open source functionality. And we're enabling the ability through our license to expand the scope to accommodate more growth and expansion of open source and Linux. And it's not a static license. It's a very unusual license. There's never been a license that's been this successful before, especially since it has an unusual provision of when we expand the scope, we don't ask for permission from our licensees. We do it because we're trusted by them to understand where open source is going to, and we're trusted to make good decisions about what should be in that scope. We have many companies, Chinese, American, European, Japanese, that are part of our technical advisory council that help advise us on exactly what should be in the next expansion. We don't do this without consultation, but at the same time, we're taking advice from leaders in each of those regions, countries of the world. We provide a lot of comfort to the adoption of open source code. Up until 2011, the Linux Foundation was primarily the manager of Linux and the Linux kernel. But it's decided at that point, its director, Jim Zemlin, decided that they would expand and only do projects under permissive licenses, which had very weak patent protection provisions like Apache. And what that meant is it created the necessity for OIN to partner with major projects that were launched by the Linux Foundation and other organizations that also were using permissive licenses. And so what happened is that as new projects were formed, we would work with the companies that were joining those projects and sign them up to licenses because they didn't have the strong protection that they might get from for example, GPL v3, which is the only of the GPL licenses that actually has very strong patent protection provisions. So considering that was not used by any of the projects inside Linux Foundation, and they now have 392 projects that are active. All these projects create a certain amount of they're aware that they create a certain amount of exposure, but OIN is a partner to be able to deal with that exposure to ensure that companies won't sue you when you enter into these projects and adopt a code that comes out of them. And so this partnership has been critically important in enabling the growth of open source and the reduction of risk and concern and fear, uncertainty, and doubt related to open source and patents. There's no monetary cost. We're funded by the leaders, these companies in the tech sector who really decided that they needed to step up in order to provide for the future of open source and to take the risk away associated with patenting and patent ownership. And we also provide defensive support. We challenge patent applications via the pre-issuance submission program in North America. We use programs in Europe to oppose patents. We're looking at utilizing more opportunities that are now being created in China to be able to ensure that only high quality patents get granted. We also identify prior art and work with communities to ensure that that prior art is shared. So if a company's at risk or in litigation, it can gain access to that prior art. We're also we founded and funded the Unified Open Source Zone, and we do patent risk syndications where PAE risk can be reduced by giving people access through third-party intermediaries to very low-cost licenses that only focus on open source and not on the broader functionality that people might also be interested. But our goal is to focus only on open source. And as I said before, it really is a litmus test for authenticity. And every company that we talk to, they increasingly talk about it as being important because it's part of the part of what you do when you're an authentic company within the open source community. Next slide, please, Crystal. And the important component of this is that co-opetition, and that's really what open source is about, the idea of we cooperate to compete more effectively. Co-opetition and the relevance of IP in an open source hardware world, which we're looking to enter into by the end of this year, if at all possible, is that in software and hardware, this idea of co-opetition changes the way we think about intellectual property, but it doesn't signal the demise of it. You can still have intellectual property and patents, but you need to recognize that you need to use them in a more thoughtful and appropriate way, and that you can't impair the ability of collaborative development, because this is the lifeblood of innovation in tech going forward, whether it be software or hardware. And so community solutions like what OIN has done very successfully on the software side since 2005, and what we're proposing to do starting at the end of this year on the hardware side, these things that enable patent risk mitigation that are collaborative activities with thousands of participants, these are very important as part of the community initiatives to reduce patent risk collectively, and for people to participate, to recognize that we all are in this together. This is a community with a capital C, and what that means is that we rise and fall together, and we need to lift each other up. We need to all participate in order to get the maximum value and distill the collective intelligence of literally tens of thousands of people in some projects to be able to ensure that we're able to produce best-in-class code and hardware designs and libraries and components. Next slide, please. So what we're doing now, and we can go to the next slide, Crystal, thanks. Thank you. And so what we started really 2 years before 2021, but we've been doing this for quite a while as part of an initiative that Google has sponsored inside OIN. But more directly and more broadly, we've opened up a working group that we convened in April of 2021, where we brought all manner of companies and projects together to talk about the OIN model, how it might be applied, and how applicable it would be to open source hardware, what kind of expertise we can tap into. We talk to communities, we talk about credibility, success, the portability of our model to get companies very quickly signed up so that we don't have the same growing pains that we had with OIN over the last 18 years. And so we developed and refined the risk profile of potential threateners. And what Rios is doing is also been very helpful to have other people thinking about risk and threat. Very important to ensure that we are looking at it in the right way, that we're utilizing the right approach, and we're looking at companies also in the most appropriate way to understand where risk can come from, even if a company is not a threatenor now. The fact that they own patents that read on technology that is very important means that they could become a threatenor in the future. So they bear watching and monitoring their portfolio to see what their filing strategy is now and in the future. We've characterized the threat as whether it's a monolithic threat, a multi-party threat, a community threat, whether it's significant in terms of being major or minor. We came out of an environment where we had one monolithic threat that was most concerning on the software side, and that was Microsoft. Microsoft ultimately signed the OIN license 3.5 years ago, which shows that if you're out there and you're making a difference and you're building community, that even the largest and most antagonistic companies ultimately will recognize the inevitability of open source. We expect the same thing to be true on the hardware side. And so it became what happens after what comes next. What do we do after Microsoft is signed? And I think hardware became a very natural arena for us to look in. We've ensured that the aperture is open to view disaggregated patent risk to significant open source hardware projects, not only operating companies and not just the usual suspects, the people that own patents, but who's filing patents very aggressively that may not have patents now. How are these companies positioned? Do they sign licenses? Will they engage in cross licenses? Will they lay down their arms in support of the community? Or are they looking to hold on to patents to be able to pose a risk in the future to sue? And the application of OIN software license, we've developed a hardware license that we're now putting the finishing touches on, which will be ready for the community to review sometime in late August. And we've developed a list of technologies by interviewing many different companies and projects to know what should be in the open source hardware definition or the patent no-fly zone around RISC-V and other open source hardware projects. And that's essentially my presentation. And I wanted to indicate that what we've done in software, we're repurposing to use in hardware, and we're taking in as much information and guidance and expertise as we can to ensure that what we put in the initial patent no-fly zone, the technology, the functionality, the designs, the cores, the elements, the enabling code, functional descriptions, all the things that we put in there to capture what's important in open source hardware. We want contributions, we want outreach. So if anyone has any ideas or thoughts that they want to share, recommendations, nominations, we welcome that conversation now, because it's critically important that we have those discussions before we advance to open to launch the license later in the year. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you tonight and today. And if there are any questions, just please ask.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you, Case. We talked a lot about the companies we want to bring to the community. How about the government? Well, will the government get involved, and what is role in the community?
We don't have a model that embraces government necessarily, because we don't see government as a potential threatenor. I mean, I think, in China that, I've not seen that the government is actually utilizing patents in any way. I think there are many governmental organizations that are developing AI. It obviously hasn't escaped our interest that AI, the filing strategies and the filing numbers in China are very significant, and in other critical technologies as well. And so we know that there are governmental organizations and think tanks, study groups that own patents, but we don't see that. We haven't seen in software, and we don't expect to see it in hardware, that governmental entities will be suing. We expect that the entities that, to your point, that are concerning to us are private public um, enterprises that are research institutes. Etri in Korea is very concerning because they have been an antagonist in the open source software world, and they don't have a conscience about their behavior. They don't care anything about economic growth across the globe, but only about Korea's economic advancement. And they have become very driven by return on investment, and we don't think that's consistent with how Samsung or LG or Korea Telecom or others that have supported Etri over the years would like to see them behave. And so we have been very active in ensuring that the patents are attacked whenever we see them being used, and several of their patents have been invalidated by Unified Patents, which is our partner on the post grant in patent interdiction. So we're concerned not so much about governments, but we're concerned about the governmental industry partnerships that are not properly monitored and not properly incented to enable innovation rather than to retard innovation through the use of patents.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you very much.
I will correct. Thank you. I will correct the questions and email to you if
Okay.
there are more. Okay, thank you for sharing.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good.